The shape selection tools are going to be mostly useful in graphic design or when you're creating borders. When you're working with photos, you're going to want to use the freehand drawing selection tools or the smart selection tools. And the most effective smart tool is probably it's not even one of the tools in the list actually. You have to go up to select and go to select subject. And Photoshop's algorithm will do a pretty good job of figuring out what it is you want to select. But it doesn't always work perfectly. So if we turn that layer off and go back to this one, let's say we want the dog, it has not done quite as good a job this time. And it's given us a big chunk of this person's leg, which we didn't want. We've also lost part of the ear. So it's not quite as effective. So that's when we would have to switch to other tools. It's always a good idea to start with select subject, and then if that doesn't work, move to something that's a little bit more granular. So if you go down to the third of the three selection tools, click and hold, you'll see this has got three options. Object selection is very much like select subject, except you are limiting the search to a particular part of the image. So basically you draw a box, draw it so that the thing you want to select is entirely inside the box, and then let go. And then what Photoshop does is try to find inside that box what it thinks you want to select. And you can see here it did a much better job. It still got a little bit of the leg, but nowhere near as much as it did with select subject. This can also be useful if what you want to select is not the main part of the image. So if I control D, let's say for some reason you want this person's leg, you're not even after the dog. Well, select subject will not give you that. But if you draw the box around here with the select object tool, it does a very nice job of quickly selecting that leg for you. So this is a sort of more specific version of the select subject option. But what happens if you still don't get exactly what you want? So let's say we go back to our dog here and do our select object, and we've got the ear nicely, but we still get a little bit too much of the leg. What do we do then? Well, that's where we can go here and switch to the quick select tool. The quick select tool, basically you paint in the area that you want to select, and Photoshop looks for edges. It looks for where it thinks the object ends. Now we've already got most of the dog selected here, but we have more than the dog selected. So we're going to go up here to subtract selection. Right now we're on add, so you can see the plus sign in the icon. We're going to go to subtract because we want to remove things from the selection. And what we're going to do is just click and paint into the areas that we don't want. We're going to try to tell Photoshop to look, well, if we clicked once and it did it, Photoshop starts realizing, oh, you don't want this black stuff. Where's the next edge? And then it clicks right to there. So we'll try the same thing in here. We don't want that grass. So if we click once, Photoshop looks for the next edge, which is quite accurate. So this is a tool where you can kind of go back and forth just to help Photoshop figure out where are the edges that you actually want to select. Now, the drawing tools, there's a lasso tool, two other different kinds of lasso tools. The lasso tool itself is just a freehand drawing selection tool. So you can just click and draw, and when you let go, it connects your first point and your last point together. So it just allows you to kind of freehand an area. That can be useful if you don't really care very much about what you're selecting. You just need the head and you don't care about what else you get with it. You can do a quick selection like that. It can also be useful to touch up a selection, either cutting out a small part that you didn't want or adding a small part that you did want. So let's say you used the object selection on the dog and you got little pieces of corner that you didn't want. I want this part right here. I want that cut out of the selection. Go to subtract, and then you can actually draw in a little area there to get rid of a corner. Or let's say there's a spot here and it just wasn't careful enough in the corner. So you can just draw around that with the subtraction on, and it will subtract that corner. from the selection, or you need the ear, etc. And if it's something you think you can draw in fairly simply, you can do stuff like that. So this is usually just used if you need to fine tune an area. So let's try these tools out and do something that we might do in a digital editing assignment. So let's say we wanted to change the color of this flower and make it appear to be glowing. So what we're going to do is use one of the smart selection tools to select the flower itself. I'll let you decide which one you're going to use. And once you have it selected, then you're going to go up here to Image, Adjustments, and then go down to Hue and Saturation. And what that's going to do, if you move this hue slider, it's going to allow you to change the color of the flower. But see how we don't really want the inside of the flower to change like that? That looks kind of weird when it changes some of the colors. So let's cancel that for a minute. And we're going to try to subtract this flower here, subtract the center of the flower rather here. So I'm going to reduce my brush size a little bit, and with I'm already on the subtraction, you can see the minus sign. I'm going to try to click in here and just select the yellow parts of the flower. Okay, got a little bit of the pink, I don't want that. So I'm going to go back to Add, click, and correct that part a little bit. This doesn't have to be perfect. Now if you go up to Image and Adjustments and Hue, now we can change the hue. That doesn't really change the inside of the flower. So pick something that's interesting. You can bump up the saturation if you want and make it really intense. It's up to you. Hit OK. So there is our different colored flower. Now we're going to do something that's going to allow us to put an outer glow on this. Now because that's a layer effect, we need to put this flower on its own layer. Now we do want to copy the entire flower, so we're going to have to add this back into the selection. You choose what tool you want in order to do that. I'm going to actually jump to the lasso tool, make sure it's on Add, and I'm just going to draw around it. There, now I've got the whole flower selected. So now I'm going to right click inside it and go to Layer via Copy. So now I've put my flower on a separate layer, which means we can now use layer effects. So I'm going to double click this to bring up the layer effects window, and I'm going to put an outer glow. So you can select something probably large, a big glow so it can be seen, and you can pick a color that, that matches your flower color. In fact, you can even select it directly from the flower if you want. And hit OK. And there we go. We've got a nice, interesting, glowing flower. So go ahead and try that out and then save your result. You'll be attaching that to your next Spark page.